In 1966, the Chicago Bears drafted the son of a Pennsylvania coal miner in the 4th round. Doug Buffone would go on to play 15 seasons for the Bears and later be named one of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. His allegiance to the Bears never waned, even when he took to the microphone and witnessed some horrendous Bears teams.
The fact is, there's not the fear put into them, because this game is a lot about fear. You either do the job, or you go home and go sell hamburgers at McDonald's.
Doug told it like it is, and that's part of the reason his nephew John has dedicated this show to Doug. And now John Buffone is spreading Buffone-branded beratements just like his uncle.
Being a Chicago Bears fan is like being in a toxic relationship that you can't get out of. I think I'm finally done, and then they come back and they say, well, things are going to be different this time. I've changed. We've got receivers now. We've got the quarterback now. And even though I've heard this song and dance before, I go back every time.
And he's got pep talks too.
I love this team. And I know everyone watching and listening loves this team. So while we may be pessimistic and cynical, every one of us still has hope that the stars will align at some point. And if that ever does happen, you'll be glad you stuck around.
John is telling it like it is here on Buffone 55. And joining John are Alyssa Barbieri, managing editor of USA Today's NFL Wires, including Bears Wire, and also Danny Shimon, lead game and draft analyst for the Barroom Network. Buckle up and bear down. This is Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55. I'm your host, John Buffone, and I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, and I wish I could tell you that this show is going to offer you a little bit of hope in the future about the Chicago Bears, but honestly, I don't think I can make that wish come true. What I can promise you, however, is that for the next 60 to 90 minutes, we're going to be brutally honest with you about those Chicago Bears, and with me to deliver the brutal truth is Alyssa Barbieri. She's the managing editor of the USA Today's Football Wires, including Bears Wire. Plus, please welcome Danny Shimon, the Barroom's chief game and draft analyst. Danny, Alyssa, glad to be here with you tonight. First, let me thank both you and Aldo Gandia for pushing through last week while I was attending some very important business out in the woods of Western Pennsylvania. But anyway, guys, I want to start off by just sharing our visceral gut reactions to what we had to watch on Sunday. Danny, I'm going to start with you. How do you feel?
Well, the words that sum up for me, John, are basically disappointed, laughing stock, embarrassing, quitters, overmatched. Those are some of the words that came to me after the anger that just kind of besieged my body. And initially, as I saw that game plan, the way they played, the effort they put on the football field, and it was so unfortunate because I was looking forward to this first game on the Thomas Brown. I was hoping, at least what the players were talking about, that they felt this like energy now in the locker room, and Eberflus, what they wanted. Eberflus gone. He was gone now, and now they're going to come out there, and I expected this little bump that the team usually get once they make a head coaching change. But oh my God, the Bears looked like they were totally outclassed from the coaching staff, organization-wise, from the players' effort. I mean, guys, this wasn't even the 49ers at their healthiest. This is the 49ers missing like 3 or 4 Pro Bowl players that are out for a long stretch of time because of injuries. Imagine what would have happened if Nick Bosa had played, Christian McCaffrey had played, Trent Williams had played. I mean, this would have been a total disaster. And already it was embarrassing as it was, throughout most of that game. It was very disappointed. And this now, for me at least, I don't know about you guys, this questions the character of this football team, of that locker room. The locker room that Ryan Poles has been clamoring for and saying that this is we're building this culture. Well, you know what? That culture took a dump on national TV on Sunday. And what's even worse now, they're going to bring it on Monday Night Football again. And John, this goes back to your thing where I know you hate the Bears on national TV, but guess what? We're going to see them again. And I mean, let's not even get into the coaching aspect of this. We'll get into that part further on, but just a total, I was just looking forward to something new, some new energy and just feeling refreshed. I wanted to see something exciting. And then it just pooped all over us all over again.
Alyssa, you and I were talking before the show a little bit, but as you were watching this game, what was going through your mind and during and after, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Bears fans, sometimes we have this thought, hey, it can't get worse, but it always can. And I think we all expected after Matt Eberflus was fired, like Danny summarized perfectly, like we expected the players to come out energized and because they got what they wanted, right? Matt Eberflus is gone now. They can really, play for Thomas Brown, which again, we heard all week about, how much they wanted to play for him and just like how much or how great he'd already been in such a short time with the entire team. And then the effort on the field, which pissed me off the most, and just watching, it didn't look like they wanted to be out there, and you're getting paid millions of dollars to do this. And you demanded Eberflus be gone, especially. I was just like, we talked about before the show, John, that, apathy is like, we're getting closer and closer to that. And sometimes, like at times during the game, I was like, if I wasn't getting paid to cover this, I would have loved to have turned it off. I would have come close probably. I expected more from this team. And like Danny said, it is a character and a culture issue, which just makes this head coaching hire coming up even more important because you really need someone in there. And obviously we'll talk to you about Ryan Poles and the front office as a whole, and just the organization as a whole just needs, a culture shock. But especially this head coach hire, you really need to get someone in there that's going to be able to unite these guys and demand more, because that effort was embarrassing.
No, you're right. And I'll go one step closer. You said we were inching near that apathetic feeling. I'm there. I was there. I remember watching this game, and I'm flipping back, and I'm watching the Rams and the Bills. And I'm like, oh, this is a great game. And then I'd go and I'd check Arizona and Seattle. I'm like, oh, this is kind of a competitive game. And then halfway through, I'm like, oh, crap, the Bears are still on. So I'd have to go back and get back to the Bears game. Meanwhile, it's, at that 24-0, or and depending on what time of the game you're watching. But it's the worst thing I think that can happen to a franchise where some of your fans just stop getting super, super angry about losing. And it's just like, well, what do you expect? It's the Bears. They're going to lose. I mean, we've seen so many instances this year where it's just like, well, they're going to find a way to lose, whether it's close or an overtime or some kind of gaffe at the end or clock management, or just getting your doors blown off by the 49ers. So it's to the point where it's like, yeah, they're going to lose. So, okay, what's next? Okay, what else on? There's a difference between the NFL season, which is competitive and it's fun to watch and there's parity, and then there's the Chicago Bears season where you kind of know where it's going. So that I've been able to differentiate to where I'm a big NFL fan and it's fun and it's to be able to watch. They're like, oh yeah, the Chicago has a team too. So there's like this weird dynamic of how I watch football, because I'm like, wow, those teams are good and they're competing. They might have a chance to win. I'm like, oh yeah, and my team's playing as well. It's just, it sucks. It sucks that we're at this point. Again, it's not like this is anything new. We're there consistently and we're into that apathetic point. And that's not where I want to be. That's not where fans want to be. I know that's not where the players or the fans or the front office want to be, but I can't blame the fans, so we're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper into this. And I kind of want to start with that first half, which was historic for all the wrong reasons. Danny, the 49ers outgained the Bears 319 to, let me check. I'm gonna carry the four in the first half. So which
one of those 4 yards were your favorite yards there, John?
Yeah, that should be the real segment. Which yard was your favorite? Like that's what 40, that's, you had 48 feet of offense. Is my math right there? So Danny, what the hell happened with Thomas Brown coming in as the head coach? Was he too concerned about being the head coach and not enough about play calling? What happened?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, this is 2 weeks in a row now, right? Even going back to the Thanksgiving game where the Bears were shut out in the first half, And then at halftime, they go in and they make an adjustment and they come out and they start, at least moving the ball. And that first drive in the second half, they go down the field and they get a touchdown. And you're like, oh, what the hell happened? Well, this is the same offense that was playing the first half. So I'm not sure what kind of adjustments they're making at half and that they can't make on the sidelines while the first half is going on. But that's the one thing there. But the one thing that became evident here, guys, is the 49ers, again, talked about their best pass rusher was down. Leonard Floyd, someone in the chat mentioned, had 2 sacks. He was unstoppable, basically. And then, but what it did was they're playing a lot of, in terms of their coverages, they're disguising a lot of this stuff and not rotating and not changing up right until the last minute, sometimes even post-snap. So they're trying to confuse Caleb Williams, where they did a good job at it initially. But guys, just watching the 49ers corners, watching any corner that plays against the Bears offense, they squat. They have their landmarks and they squat. They're not. There's no fear of a vertical game here. The Bears are never going deep. They never stretch the field. Some might say, well, they don't have a vertical threat. Well, I just think, well, that could be part of it, right? Tyler Scott was supposed to be one of the vertical threats. He can get active for the game. Roman Nuzek can get deep, but he's not a burner per se. DJ Moore also can get deep, but that's not really his game per se. And the other thing is, you don't have an offensive line that can allow the quarterback to go 7-step, 8-step back there and to give him some time to these routes down the field can develop. So they have no deep game. They have no vertical threat. So all these corners and all these defensive backs, they're basically sitting on their landmarks. And now you have to, if you're Caleb, you gotta, their passing game is all, horizontal. You're gonna have to get the ball over the second level linebacker, right in front of that safety, right in front of that corner, get these, 10 to 15 yard gains. And it limits you in terms of how explosive you could be on offense. And then there were 7 rushes in the first half by DeAndre Swift. I think he got 7 just in that first drive alone in that second half. So 14 rushes for the entire game. That's not enough or not a big commitment to the running game. So again, and then the drop passes. DJ Moore dropped a pass. Keenan Allen dropped how many passes this year? A guy for a guy who's a veteran, sure-handed, he drops a lot of passes. Cole Kmet dropped that 2-point conversion in the end zone, right in his chest. So there are just so many mistakes all over the place. Again, it was just a lot of the stuff that we saw early on in the season before they switched over to Thomas Brown. So that was really disappointing because I don't think that the change from up in the booth where Brown was down to the field should have been that big of a difference, because I assume he has someone up in the booth that's giving him that viewpoint in terms of being his eyes up there saying, all right, this is what they're doing, this is the personnel they're coming in, so on and so forth. So I think he has that information already. But just the fact that they had no offense, no momentum, no rhythm in the first half, got some of it in the second half, and then but by then your defense is already down 24-0, and now you kind of abandon the running game and they're all held to the wall and see what happens. And of course, we saw what the final score was.
And Danny, you mentioned that offensive line, so I want to go to this question by Travis Dunaway here. At the end of this, it says, how does a GM who was an offensive lineman not have the line at the top of his list? It said it's not high on their priority. Danny, take us through how they built the offensive line and what they have to do to the offensive line, because it just seems like Ryan Poles may have overestimated his ability to find diamonds in the rough and go to the bargain bin and plug and play and have it work. What's your assessment on that? That's
a great question. That's something I've been asking as well, is how can an former offensive lineman who knows how important that position is for a quarterback, you go and get your quarterback, you go get your franchise quarterback, number 1 overall. How do you not fortify the offensive line? And instead you go thrift store shopping for offensive linemen. You pick guys off the scrap heap, right? We've talked about it before on previous shows. He's only committed, I believe it's 2 day 1 or day 2 picks to the offensive line. That's Darnell Wright a couple years ago. And then this past year, a 3rd round pick for Karan Amadaji, who unfortunately cannot stay healthy and get on the football field. So, we got Coleman Shelton off the scrap heap. He gave up a 5th round pick for Ryan Bates, who's got a concussion issue. He's a guy that was going to get cut by the Bills, gave up a 5th round pick for him. We talked about Braxton Jones, a 5th round starter, 5th round pick, a starter for most of his career. But he still struggles with the bull rush. We saw him again bull back into Caleb Williams, and then gave up a sack there as well. So that's something that I just can't comprehend, that an offensive lineman, a GM that's former offensive lineman, still has not, within year 3 of his regime, has not fortified that offensive line, that unit in front of him. So yeah, it's just bargain basement shopping and trying to patch things together when you should be going and fortifying that unit to protect your franchise quarterback.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of things that have to happen in the offseason, and the offensive line should be the priority because your greatest commodity right now is a young quarterback who you're trying to keep upright and you're trying to continue his progression. So we'll see how that is addressed. Alyssa, I want to pivot over to you and talk about, the defense didn't do much better in this game. The offense obviously stole the show with their 4 yards of offense in the first half, but the defense didn't play much either. What do you attributed that to? Is it the loss of Eberflus? Is it the new defensive coordinator? Is it just possibly players on the defense saying, I'm done with this, I'm just going to do some self-preservation? What do you think that it was?
I think it's, some combination of all of what you just said. I mean, that first half, that defense, they allowed 24 points. And remember, this was a defense that for 10 plus games dating back to last season hadn't allowed more than 21 points for more than 10 games in it. So how the defense has fallen, that's one of the biggest disappointments. When you have Brock Purdy back there just shredding the defense, I think he completed 16 of 18 passes for almost 300 yards and a couple touchdowns in the first half alone, and had a perfect passer rating or whatnot. That's unacceptable. And you look at, again, the lack of a pass rush, right? And TJ Edwards had the lone sack in the game for Chicago. But, I think, Matt Eberflus is a defensive coordinator. We understood the importance of that. And I think that's why he lasted as long as he did, because of where he had that defense, because, there are some talented players on that defense, but again, there are a lot of average players as well. And he was able to get the most out of them. So I think that Eric Washington stepping in, and, it was short notice because, hey, you fired, Matt Eberflus, and all of a sudden Washington is stepping into this role, kind of like Thomas Brown had to step in as the head coach. So, I mean, then again, you look at the effort on the field by the players, and I think that's where it starts as well. So just overall, because the defense was the reason they were winning games earlier in the season, and to see them fall as they have, it's been one of the most disappointing things.
Well, you're talking about disappointment, so let's just go around the horn real quick. Danny, if you can, who was the biggest disappointment, or who is the biggest disappointment, or what disappoints you the most, or pick any scenario here. You can't go wrong, really.
Right, and I agree with Alyssa. I think that the defense was really the biggest disappointment here. So obviously, Eberflus, we've talked about in terms of what he did when the Bears couldn't generate pass rush. His ability to scheme up pressure, even on run fits, he was good in terms of designing run blitzes where he can come in and he could force teams to kind of be one dimensional and then bring the design pressure and disguise it really well. Bring it from all 3 different levels. What we saw on Sunday was, first of all, Kyle Shanahan just putting out a masterclass in terms of depantsing Eric Washington. And then the other thing I found out is Eric Washington is equal to Alan Williams. Basically, they're the same guy, just different body types. Because the same thing with Alan Williams, we saw no pressure. We saw basic vanilla cover, tempo 2, 4-3 defense, where even the pressures he brought were just typical pressures, the mug looks and all that stuff that you normally see in this Tampa 2 defense, as opposed to what Eberflus was doing. He'd disguise it, he'd coverage it, he'd bring some decoy to it. This was just plain old vanilla defense. And then Shanahan said, "This is easy pickings." He just ran up and down the field, called whatever play you want to call, and then like Alyssa said, Brock Purdy had a perfect passer rating in that first 300 yards of passing in that first. That was just pure embarrassing. I mean, the fact that George Kittle was wide open, a perennial Pro Bowl tight end, was just. There was times he caught balls and there was no one around him, like 5-10 feet around him. Like, what are you doing? You would think this guy would be one of your primary guys you would cover and running just wide open. And I know I just kind of gave praise to Shanahan in terms of being a great scheme or play caller, but come on, guys. Someone would just say, all right, hey, George Kittle is running wide open. Someone should go drop back and maybe cover the guy. And the whole afternoon we saw George Kittle come wide open. Juwan James had 2 touchdowns. They didn't even use Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel was just like extra decoy there out there. And again, without Christian McCaffrey and some of the other players there as well. Isaac Guerrero came off he's a 3rd string running back filling in for Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason was the backup, who was also out as well. Isaac Gardner comes in, a rookie, and he scores 78 yards of rushing, had a huge pass. Wide open, and draws a pass interference on Jack Sanborn. Scores touchdown there as well. He looked like he was unstoppable as well. So just total embarrassment. If Eric Washington's going to continue to do this for the next 4 weeks and just play a vanilla type defense, this defense is going to be, again, going back to the days of Allen Williams, where we're just going to be teams are going to be running up and down the field as they choose, whether it's running the ball or passing the ball. That was just totally just disheartening, because at least one thing you could do with the Bears is, offensively they were struggling, and they might have been, Matt could catch up a little bit here slowly, surely, but the defense would stop them. Defense would at least, give up only field goals and not give up touchdowns. That was a key. That would keep the Bears in the game. Hence the Detroit game, right? Thanksgiving, they kept them in the game, and then the offense finally picked it up, and they got back into the game and had a chance to win at the end. So, the fact that defense just totally just kind of laid down and it didn't put up a fight, to me, it was really disappointing.
Yeah, it used to be bend, don't break, and now it's just, okay, it smashes into pieces.
Just bend over.
And so it's one of my bigger disappointments, I think, would be Montez Sweat. Like they gave the guy $100 million, I think 4.5 sacks so far. And Danny, we talked about this. He was never going to be that, 20-sack guy. He wasn't going to be a TJ Watt guy, but he was going to be a big time disruptor that was going to command a lot of attention on that defensive line. And it just hasn't clicked. And whether that's on him or it's the scheme or whether it's the supporting cast, I don't know. But it was just disappointing to see that. And the defense in general, which is supposed to be the thing that keeps you in game, is no longer keeping you in games. And so what happens when the offense isn't working and then the defense, which is supposed to be what's keeping you in games, stops working? You become a really, really bad football team instead of just a bad football team. So that's what we're watching right now. Alyssa, I mean, like I said, take your pick. Like, what's your biggest disappointment?
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered the defense coming out of this game, but I mean, I feel like he's the easy target, but Thomas Brown disappointed me. I think not necessarily from the head coach aspect, but the offense, because I think that this was the biggest concern with Brown stepping in as that interim head coach, is that the offense and Caleb Williams would be neglected a little bit, because, he does have to worry about the entire team now. And so his entire attention can't be on Caleb and it can't be on the offense. And to see, again, this offense come out as flat as it did, especially when we've seen how Caleb really started to flourish under Thomas Brown since he took over as interim offensive coordinator, I think that, that overall was disappointing. And also, I think in this game specifically, I would say Cole Kmet, as Danny mentioned, just that drop on that 2-point conversion. He's someone who has always been someone who will catch the ball most of the time. He doesn't have a lot of drops, and to see that one right in the chest, I mean, that was brutal. I don't know, this entire game, the effort from all sides, even veterans who normally you don't see this from. It was kind of all around. And then, during his I think it was a post-game press call. Yeah. Caleb Williams was talking about, how he can only lead so much and he's going to need the other players to actually do their part in it. And so I'm really curious, and we might be able, obviously, to kind of see who some of those players are. Tyreek Stevenson. Yeah, it's just overall disappointment. Just, I mean, like you said, take your pick. We could do a whole show just about, what was most disappointing from that just absolute embarrassment on Sunday.
And, you mentioned Thomas Brown, so that's an easy segue into my question for Danny. Let's talk about Thomas Brown. Were the expectations too high for Thomas Brown going into this game? Because we had this conversation. A lot of other people had this conversation. A lot of other shows talked about, is he auditioning to be the head coach for the Chicago Bears? Or is he going to be auditioning to be the offensive coordinator for whoever comes in to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears? Was there too much too soon before he actually stepped onto the sideline?
No, I don't really think so. I mean, obviously he's an interim head coach. I think he's a guy that's highly regarded around the league, and I think we've seen his work with Caleb, but really was progressing the last 3 weeks. I think whether the Bears have won this game or they lost this game, it wasn't going to be like, all right, Thomas Brown, they won this game, Thomas Brown's going to be the head coach next year, or vice versa, right? So I think what the biggest disappointment was what's going on with the first half, right? We talked about it earlier in the show. Halftime they make adjustments. And then they come on in the second half, then they put up drives together and they hold the ball and they score some points. why can't those adjustments be made in the first half? That's my question for Thomas Brown. And then another thing was talked about is, galvanizing the team, and unifying the team. We saw more, if not, worse in terms of effort from this team than they did for Eberflus. So our coaches, they all wanted gone, right? So, why did that happen? What was it? Was he a little bit too easy on the players early on? Because it was a big change and everything like that. If Thomas Brown wants a head coaching job in this league moving forward, he's going to have to put his foot down. He's going to have to come up and do something in terms of getting these players to play hard for him. Because again, for me, the effort just wasn't there. It was embarrassing, especially on the defense. Whether you got to go to Eric Washington and be like, listen, we got to put some more pressure. We're not getting to our guys with four guys. Get a little creative, do something different. He's got to have to be a head coach. If he wants to prove to the NFL he's a head coach material, he's going to have to go ahead and use these 4 games, the remaining 4 games as an auditioning or a springboard to that career. So, for me, he wasn't as disappointing as much as the entire team was disappointing, because again, the effort just wasn't there, and that spark, that jolt I expected from a head coaching change, similar to what the Saints are doing. Look at the Saints under Darren Rizzi, their special teams coordinator. Now they've won 2 games, or I think it's 3 games under Darren Rizzi there as well. So that jolt is what I expected the Bears to have, and they just came out flat.
Yeah, and props to the to human resources over at the Bears for getting all that paperwork done for Thomas Brown for changing jobs 3 times in a month. So I mean, that was a quick progression from where he started the season to where he is. So I mean, it is a whirlwind of things, and trying to grasp things very quickly, because that's how the Chicago Bears operate. Alyssa, yesterday, ESPN 1000 show host Mark Silverman reported that there may be a power struggle going on at Hallis Hall. That was detailed perfectly over at Bears Wire, by the way. Can you share what appears to be happening between Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren?
Yeah, shocker, guys. The Bears organization is dysfunctional. Sylvie, said that, quote, someone with firsthand knowledge told him that Ryan Poles was frustrated with the change in the reporting structure when Kevin Warren was hired as president back in 2023. And I won't speculate about who Sylvie's source is, but I think that the timing of all this is very interesting, to say the least. But reportedly, one of the big reasons that Poles took the Bears job was because he liked reporting directly to the team owner, as there is no buffer or direct boss for that matter. Poles could go straight to George McCaskey if he had any issues or if he needed anything. So Poles was frustrated right from the start when Warren was hired. And it didn't have anything to do with Warren as a person. Rather, he didn't like having gone from reporting to ownership to a president who then reports to ownership. So, it sounds like had the Bears had a president already in place back in 2022, that Poles might not have taken this job in the first place. And then Sylvie also theorized that perhaps a mutual parting could take place between Poles and the Bears at the end of the season. Although, I find that hard to imagine, considering the Bears just drafted Caleb Williams, and 3 consecutive losing seasons won't exactly have Poles a hot commodity for another GM job. And John, before we as a group discuss this topic further, the Podfather has put together this video that is an assessment of the Bears general manager and what he promised back in January of 2022.
At this time, I'd like to welcome to the dais General Manager Ryan Poles.
Over 34 months ago, Ryan Poles was introduced by Bears chairman George McCaskey as the team's new general manager.
Good afternoon.
He made 7 promises that day. Let's listen to each one by one, and assess how he's done.
We're going to build through the draft. We're going to acquire young, fast, and physical football players.
Well, he really hasn't adhered to that philosophy very well. In fact, in his first draft, he selected a 25-year-old wide receiver and return man who is no longer on the team.
That was as wide open as you could get. Slip, a fall, a throw, a drop.
The Chicago Bears, who have been sellers so far over the past week, are buyers today. They get wide receiver Chase Claypool.
A few months later, in midseason, he traded a second-round draft pick for a wide receiver who would later be traded.
The Steelers, after 2.5 years, were clearly done with him. That should have been a trigger to the Chicago Bears, as it was to many other teams, that if the Steelers are done with a wide receiver, a seemingly talented wide receiver, maybe you shouldn't go out and try to get him. But they did. And they sent a second-round pick, and it was their second-round pick, and not the second that they got from the Baltimore Ravens in the Roquan Smith trade.
We're going to be selective in free agency, and we're going to connect evaluation with valuation.
Poles failed in his first attempt at free agency. Larry Ogunjobi agreed to a 3-year deal worth $40.5 million. A few days later, the Bears rescinded the deal due to a failed physical. But most importantly, Poles' valuation assessment has to be seriously questioned when it comes to offensive linemen. Sometimes it's better to overvalue certain position players because of their responsibilities. They are the key to protecting your quarterback, improving the pass and run game.
We're going to have a relentless approach to fix our weakness.
The year before Poles joined the Bears, they were 31st in sacks allowed.
The Browns have 9 sacks.
Currently, they're 32nd in last place. Needless to say, Poles' relentless approach to fixing problems has fixed nothing.
We're going to maintain great self-awareness of who we are.
What? What?
We're going to solve problems with open communication and candor.
One of the Bears' biggest problems has been communication, and the irony of all ironies is that it is the Bears players who have been candid about that miscommunication.
And we're going to consistently put players in position to succeed.
The results after 47 games are not good. You've either hired coaches who failed to put players in position to succeed, or acquired players unable to succeed consistently, or both. And then there's this.
And the last thing, the most important piece, is we're going to take the North and never give it back.
This was clearly the best line in Poles' introductory press conference. The problem is that he didn't deliver it with any conviction, and he hasn't delivered it at all.
Just said you can't take any of it for granted. It's absolutely heartbreaking for the Bears.
When Ryan Poles was hired, I admired the approach of gutting the roster and building a healthy salary cap. But his best player available approach has backfired on him. Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker are excellent defenders. But if you had prioritized building from the inside out, you might have instead drafted offensive and defensive linemen whose return on investment has equaled or surpassed what the 2 DBs have delivered. Poles' future with the Bears is now in doubt. If he is in fact unhappy with reporting to Kevin Warren, he needs to get over it. Convince Kevin Warren that you have the right plan to correct mistakes, and if you can't do that, then you need to go. Aldo Gandia for Buffone 55.
Just like the Bears, every week I think that I can't feel any lower, and then all those videos come on, and I'm like, you know what? I'm in a much worse mood than I was about 5 minutes ago, but I guess that
wasn't wrong in that video, though. He said they were going to get the NFC North and not give it back. He meant the NFC North seller.
Well, it's good to have a stranglehold on something, I guess.
Should have been more specific too when he addressed the media too. That was going to
leave it open ended. It's more fun that way.
He was so nervous, and from when I saw him, like, this guy is so nervous. Like, you could tell he's a fish out of water. This is not something. This is a bit too big for him. It's been bad.
Well, I'll give him a pass on the public speaking if you're a good general manager, but at the same time, like, that opens up the conversation. And Danny, you've been critical for probably longer than most people. You've been critical of Ryan Poles, so that's why I want to start with you. Can you evaluate where you think he's at as far as his status with the Bears and what his future could hold here in Chicago? Because they're going to have to make a decision about a head coach And so is Kevin Warren really going to give that power to Ryan Poles?
Right, and then that's like I said, John. I've been very critical about Ryan Poles. You know, I've come back recently. I've kind of been a little bit more fair to him because he's made a couple good trades in terms of that #1 pick with Carolina, getting all those assets, and then obviously I still think the Montez Sweat trade is going to be a good trade, and T.J. Edwards was a nice signing. And I sat down and I said, all right, let's be fair. I did my pros and my cons list, right? Pros that he's done, and I read off the 3 pros I gave you right there. And I have a shit ton of load of I'm sorry, I mean to swear, but a ton of cons here in terms of negatives. He's done right now. So a couple of things that Aldo touched in that video, but ignoring the offensive line, not building from within, right? Getting players that building from the outside in terms of your defense, not your head coach. His whole system is predicated on a 3 technique and pressure from the edge. Getting pressure with 4 guys, and up until you got Gervon Dexter, who's still a young player, developing player, not a ready-made on the field ass kicker. You still haven't got this guy a 3 technique, right? You went last year and you got Montez Sweat, but there's no one opposite of Montez Sweat. We talked about they cannot generate pressure with 4 guys, and the whole defensive is predicated on generating pressure with 4 guys. So ignoring the offense and defensive line really is what pissed me off. In terms of how Ryan Poles was rebuilding this team. My saying that I've said it multiple times: if your offensive defensive line suck, your team sucks, right? But the biggest thing that you're gonna have to sit there and you can't let Poles get off of this is that the record that they pinned on Eberflus, the 14-33, that's got to go on Poles as well. But the biggest thing is he hired Matt Eberflus, right? That was his guy. That's the guy he wanted. And then to make things even worse, he doubled down on it last offseason, right? When they fired the entire offensive staff except for the offensive line coach, and then because they were going to bring in a whole new quarterback and they were going to build around him. He kept Matt Eberflus. That was a time for Ryan Poles to say, you know what? I'm going to start from scratch here. I'm going to bring in the quarterback, bring in a coach that's going to be able to develop my quarterback. But no, he doubled down on the culture. And what we found the culture sucks. Well, not only Eberflus, but Alan Williams, the defensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator that was just fired, 4 weeks ago, David Walker, the running back coach, Luke Getsy, the former offensive coordinator, these all have to be pinned on Ryan Poles because he had a hand in it. And, we have a clip here in terms of, Ryan Poles discussing in terms of how they came to the conclusion of bringing in Shane Waldron. And if we have time, I'll have to play it real quick because this tells us, it sounds good on video, but we have to question here in terms of how does this guy pick his coaches, and do you put him in? Do you trust him to hire the next coach that's going to help hopefully develop Caleb Williams? And from what we've seen in the past, he is not someone I trust in terms of bringing in this next coach. That's why at that press conference after they fired Eberflus, I texted Aldo. I said, it looks like Ryan Poles is a guy that just got scolded or got neutered. And Kevin Warren said, listen, it's time for put on some big boy pants here. I'm going to help you walk through this. And if you want to sit here and be a talent evaluator, a scout, you can do that. But I'm going to go hire the next coach. And that's what it appeared like. And from his body language at that podium, that's what it looked like happened to Ryan Poles as well. So there's a lot of questions I have about Ryan Poles, and I just fear that if you let him go ahead and actually make this pick for the next head coach, we're going to be back here again 2-3 years later with another firing and another new regime coming in.
Yeah, Aldo, if we have that video queued up, go ahead and run it. What Danny was talking about.
We would put up a scoreboard, so you would just have down, distance, time. And that's all you would have. And it's like, I want you to ask us all the questions that you would need to call the next play. Who's having a good game? Who's got the hot hand? What receiver is good? Is there any injuries that happen? What way's the wind going? Where's our kick line that we need to get to for our field goal kicker to kick? So I want to see them process all the information fast because you give them about 2 minutes to come up with this list of 10 to 15 questions. And it was really cool to do. And it was like a new thing in the coaching space because all of them were like, I'm going to use that, hiring other people.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah. I can show you my genius with this cool play that I have, or it's about people.
Yeah.
It's about matchups. It's about who's hot today. It's about what's the environment that we're in. So you can just see the different layers of thinking through like that type of questioning. So I felt like that was pretty impactful.
And yet they went through that and they came up with Shane Waldron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure all the other teams are going to be using that method from here on out to see where they landed. So yeah, that's
groundbreaking. That's truly innovative stuff. I'm sure every team in the NFL will be doing that now. Alyssa, we're talking about Poles and what his future might hold. A lot of the times, the going theory is a GM will maybe get 2 head coaches. He'll be able to hire one, and then if he screws it up, he'll get one, and that's it. That's your last chance. But do you think with that possible schism with Kevin Warren, that Kevin Warren might be better off just hiring his own GM and then they conduct a head coaching search after that? Where do you think that this goes?
That's an interesting question too, because a lot of there have been details that have emerged about certain contracts, like Matt Eberflus had signed a 5-year contract, and Ryan Poles signed a 4-year contract, according to reports. So he technically would have 1 more year left on his deal. So that's definitely something I think that Kevin Warren should consider, and especially with this reported butting of the heads, and Poles really not wanting to report to a president, which what most GMs do have to do. And it's like, what have you done that you think that you're better than those guys? I mean, you've now secured 3 consecutive losing seasons, and if there really is that behind the scenes tension, and he has 1 year left on his deal, maybe it is best for both to just part ways at this point. And maybe it would serve Kevin Warren to really hire someone that would report to him, and that he has that, I don't even want to say that's the collaborative word, but I don't know, just someone, I know, I was trying to avoid it. I mean, at this point, it seems like maybe that would be the best option, especially if it's being felt from both ends, and they might have these conversations. I'm sure they're probably having them, because this is something that you would want. If they're going to part ways, you want it as soon as possible, obviously, so you can go out and hire a GM and then have that GM conduct the coaching search. Because that was the thing with Ryan Poles when he was brought in, is he was hired, and then the Bears already had 3 finalists for that head coach job, and he did ultimately pick Matt Eberflus, but he wasn't involved in that coaching search. So maybe Kevin Warren, maybe he decides to go that way and bring in his guy. He does have, I'm assuming he does have that power. Again, that 1 year left on the deal for Ryan Poles, I think makes it interesting, especially with this reported butting of the heads. So I think, I don't know, guys, stay tuned. There could be a whole bunch of drama coming.
So much that's wrong there, right? You have your GM have a 1 year less on his contract than your head coach. Does that make any damn sense? It's just the Bears do things half-ass backwards, and it's year in and year out. It's a regime, new regime, old regime. I don't get it. But the thing, what I think here, John, and to kind of touch on Alyssa's point there, I think Kevin Warren's going big game hunting. That's my opinion. I think he's going to go and say, all right, Mike Vrabel, or if there's another coach, currently employed with another team, and he might say, you're right, they might want to get out of their contract, whatever. All right, you come in, kind of like how they did with Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. Like, all right, you come in, you be the head coach, and we'll pick your GM, or more likely the guy will get your talent value. Right? I think he's leaving that possibility open for that, right? And I think he's got Ryan Poles there saying, all right, I think if they continue if this report is true and they're continuing to butt heads, and Ryan Poles is going to be like, listen, I don't want this structure. And I think Kevin Warren's going to be okay with it. All right, you're free to go, and there could be a party in the way. But I do think Kevin Warren is big game hunting, and I think he wants to go out and get a big name coach, and allow that coach to kind of pair him up with his GM, and kind of, because that's happening right now. It happens in Denver. It's happening with the Chargers. It's happening with other places, in terms of where, it happened with the 49ers, right? They hired Kyle Shanahan before, he picked John Lynch. He wanted John Lynch for his GM. So, this is becoming a little bit more of a trend here in the NFL, and it wouldn't surprise me or shock me if that's what Kevin Warren's looking to do here as well.
And that's what, we're all trying to connect the dots here, and there it is, like, did Ryan Poles really pick Matt Eberflus, or was he just handed, or at the very least was he handed 3 names, pick one, or did they say, we're bringing you in, and a couple of days later we're going to hire Matt Eberflus and you're going to be connected to him? Did he want to fire
here locally, John? Sorry to interrupt. The reports here locally, again, reports, nothing's verified, but the reports here were he was suggested Dan Quinn, but Poles said he likes Eberflus. But again, those are just
one,
reports.
yeah, and so maybe that was the case, but you have other people saying different things about did he want to get rid of Eberflus before, and then maybe George put the kibosh on that, or the Bears don't fire guys in the midseason, so they're gonna. So I don't know all of the facts to say, like, this is to kind of string out this whole Days of Our Lives thing. What I do know is the results are not happening. And so, and Danny, to your point, if they do go out and Kevin Warren says, I want a Mike Vrabel, well, you can bet Mike Vrabel is going to want a little bit of say in personnel and a little bit of those GM responsibilities. So maybe that's the door to say, hey, I'm hiring this guy. He's going to have a lot of say over a lot of things. And I don't know if you're going to like that, because I think Ryan Poles likes to have that control, much like most GMs would, unless they have some of that collaborative energy with the head coach. I know I did it. I think that this is going to get really dramatic here in the offseason of whether or not that butting of the heads actually matters, or if that actually does show Poles the door. And then Kevin Warren says, I'm going to bring my own GM. I'm going to bring in my own coach. I'm running this show here. And I don't know. It's going to be wild. But
the one thing everybody's worried about, Kevin Warren butting his nose into, personnel. And I really don't believe Kevin Warren wants to get involved in the draft and trading and acquiring players. I think he just wants to get the leadership of this team straightened out, whether it's a coach and then he picks his GM, or go get his GM and then he picks his coach. I just think he wants it steadied from the top down. And I think that's, in my opinion, is what he's looking to do here, looking to accomplish. Because what Kevin Warren wants first and foremost, he wants a football stadium. And obviously Arlington Heights passed the tax amendment for the Bears to make it easier for them to move there. But if you saw some of the press coverage, the residents of Arlington Heights were out there. They're saying, oh, the loser Bears, they always win here, but they can't win on the football field. I mean, these are fans talking like that about the Chicago Bears. So the publicity around the Bears right now is negative. And I think he wants to kind of make it all nice and glamour, and so that way wherever he goes, whether it's the city or it's Arlington Heights, I think Kevin Warren wants to bring a nice positive image of the Bears, not something like this dysfunction that we've seen the last 10 years now.
Well,
to Danny's point,
good.
Sorry. To Danny's point, when, after Eberflus was fired, he went up there and he was talking about the head coach vacancy. He's like, this will be the most coveted job this offseason. And when you look at the current state of the Bears, obviously it's not really super attractive. And there are still going to be teams that are going to make decisions on their head coaches, at the end of the season. So perhaps it's, something where Warren is going to make sure that this becomes an attractive, coveted spot for potential coaches. And perhaps it's like what Danny alluded to. Maybe you do bring in a head coach, and then he gets to pick the GM and all that. So, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see, this offseason, and especially right after the season, how this all pans out.
Well, according to Kevin Warren, it's going to be the most coveted job in the NFL, which listen, I get it. There's a lot to like about this job. There's a lot to not like about the history of this job. And so there's all of that goes into it. Looking over some of the listener questions, let's pivot over to the defense a little bit and what could be the future there. Let's go to Flex Diggs. Question for the panel: do you think we'll get rid of this crappy base 2 cover D over the offseason? We don't have the horses to run it anyway. Danny, I know that you were never a big fan of the soft cover 2 defense that was coming out whenever Eberflus first got here under Alan Williams. Got a little more aggressive, and now we're seeing it go back to what it originally was. Should there be a shakeup in the defense, regardless of who comes in?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the one thing, whoever the coach is going to be, I mean, they're going to run their own defensive scheme wherever they believe in. And for example, if it's a Mike Vrabel, right? I mean, he's a coach that has coached and has played in a hybrid type of scheme. He can run a three-man front. He can run a 4-man front as well. But the one thing is he's going to have a physical attacking a brand of defense, and that defensive line is going to be a bunch of guys up there up front. So yeah, whoever comes in is going to pick their head coach or pick their defensive coordinator. But the one thing I just want to caution the fans, just because this new defense corner comes in and he runs a 4-3 doesn't mean it's the same 4-3 that they're running now. I mean, you could run a 4-3 and still be aggressive, still be, disguise your coverages, still be one that gets after the quarterback and makes big time plays. We've seen in the past with Eberflus in terms of how when he took over the play calling from Alan Williams, it became a more aggressive defense. It became a more effective defense. We talked about the bend but don't break. That's the philosophy they had. If they had an offense to go with that, I think they would see a little bit more victories there. But that's we can still have a 4-3 defense it's not that alignment that concerns me. It's the actual the scheming and the actual play calling, which, as we saw this past week, it was very vanilla, very plain. That system has been beaten over the years. Everything over the middle. We saw them there getting killed over the middle, whether it's the running backs in the flats or dig routes or real quick hitters over the middle. That defense is the typical traditional Tampa 2 defense. They have the offensive corners know how to beat it, and they beat it year in and year out. You got to get disguised with it. You got to get clever with it. Eberflus was doing it for a little bit. Unfortunately, his overall head coaching acumen wasn't great enough to keep his job.
Real quick follow-up to that's from 3.5 Houston. If we change the defensive scheme, does that mean it could be another 3 years to rebuild? I don't necessarily think so, but Danny, you're more in the schematics than I am.
Well, the team is built for a 4-3 defense currently, obviously with the personnel they have. But if you go to a 3-4 scheme, I mean, you can pretty much rebuild on a fly, right? I mean, the pretty thing, the thing you really need with the 3-4 is a nose tackle, a guy that can control the nose guard position there, a big burly guy. You can probably get that in free agency or in the draft, and then you obviously get those speed guys on the outside. Now, does a Montez Sweat fit that system? He probably doesn't fit that system, right? Does a Booker, Austin Booker, rookie, fit this? He could fit that system easily. So you're gonna have some pieces here and there that don't fit. So I mean, you would preferably you would want to bring in someone that runs a similar scheme, maybe a more aggressive scheme of a 4-3, or a guy like Vrabel who can do multiple units. He can do a 3-4, 4-3 hybrid and still be able to provide pressure and stop the run.
And we're talking about what coaching changes can mean, what scheme changes could be. And this is all rooted from the conversation that we were having about the GM. And Alyssa, if you let's just say you're Ryan Poles in this situation, and maybe you're not liking the direction of where the power is coming from or where the decisions are being made, would you consider walking away, or are you going to await your fate in the offseason or next season, what have you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if I'm Ryan Poles, and since I've taken over, I've overseen, what was the record again? 14-33 and 3 consecutive losing seasons. Again, I don't think that, many teams are going to be knocking down the door for my services. So at this point, I think having drafted Caleb Williams, wanting to see that through, I think that he would probably await his fate. I mean, I hope that if there is, again, because this is all reports, if there really is a butting of the heads with him and Kevin Warren, hopefully, they can get that figured out. But again, I don't really have much confidence in this organization. But I don't see him quitting and walking away after, with 1 year left on his deal. I think at this point, this, being in a GM role, because this would be the only one that he would be in after what he's done over the last 3 years. But yeah, I think he's just going to await his fate at this time and hopefully try to mend whatever rift, if there even is one, with him and Kevin Warren.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks that we keep talking about next year and the off season and the draft and the holes to fill. And so, oh, by the way, the Bears play a game this week, as if anyone cares, but they do, and they're on prime time. So this circus comes to town, and everyone gets to tune in and watch it, and everyone gets to take their shots at the Bears, and I get to have my phone blow up with texts and calls and funny voicemails the next day talking about how bad the Chicago Bears are. So, Danny, do they have any chance on Monday night against the Vikings?
I think you and I, Alyssa, and maybe even Aldo, we should go back to the woods you were in last weekend and hide there for the next 4 weeks.
No service out there. That's great. That was wonderful.
That's pretty perfect. But I don't think they have a shot, John. I was, before the Eberflus firing, I said I don't see them winning another game. After the firing, I said, you know what? They're getting the 49ers at the right time. They're injured. There's a boost in terms of getting a new coach. And I was flat wrong. They came out flat and got run over. So they're going into hostile territory on Monday night. We know that they don't perform well on prime time. If this defense and Eric Washington, if he doesn't change his ways in terms of being a little more creative and generating more pressure, Kevin O'Connell is gonna have another field day on him. We have another young, innovative passing coach that can create advantages for his offensive team. Look what he's done with Sam Darnold. He's made him a multi-millionaire now after this season. He's going to get a huge contract. So I don't see them. And again, now I'm talking about Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings defense. Caleb kind of put them to the ringer here in Soldier Field, and they put some points on them, especially towards the end of the game there. So I think they have tape now on Caleb. So I'm just curious to see how they're going to go ahead and attack Caleb and go after the Bears offense. But I really don't see how the Bears can maintain any sort of competitiveness in this game and win this game. So unfortunately, no, there's no way.
This comment just said Brandon said he's going to be at that game in Bears gear praying. I know that feeling, my friend. I've been to plenty of away Bears games. Not always have gone very well, and it's a crappy feeling. Alyssa, I believe a couple weeks ago I said they were going to win 2 more games. I said they were going to beat the Vikings the last time. They didn't. And I said they could potentially beat the Seahawks the day after Christmas at home with Seattle coming over. I don't, you know what? I might be with Danny where I don't know if they're going to win another game. I honestly don't. I don't think they're going to win another game. And it could be at the hands of Sam Darnold, who's coming off a 5-touchdown game, and the Bears' pass defense has been less than stellar. What's your take on this game on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys. I don't think that they stand a chance in this game. Looking at the last matchup, I mean, Caleb Williams really had Brian Flores' number, so that was impressive. But, when the defense was even playing a little harder than they were at this point, they still gave up 30 points. Darnold went off for almost 400 yards, 100 passer rating. You had Jordan Addison almost getting 200, TJ Hawkinson just going off. And, I mean, I feel like this could be another ugly thing because, again, going into this 49ers game, the one encouraging thing where I was like, maybe, and I did pick them to win that game. I bought into the hype with the Thomas Brown thing, and I'm like, okay, this might be the one game left on the schedule. They're going to get one more win this season. This is going to be it because that was an injury depleted team, especially on offense. And obviously we saw what happened. That probably should have been a 50 burger. I think that this game has the potential to be that. It could be pretty rough. So yeah, I think this game's over at halftime, honestly.
Oh boy. Well,
the woods are looking pretty nice right now.
I'm ready for a spa break. Let's go to the woods.
Well, I mean, the good thing for me is I can go to bed whenever it's completely out of hand, and it's the Monday night. I'll just go to sleep. Listen, you don't really have that luxury. You have work to do after that.
It's a 2:30 a.m. night after watching them get their ass kicked. This could be great.
Life on the East Coast, am I right? Yes. Gotta love it. Well, let's we talk where it's been doom and it's been gloom and it's been all this, fun stuff. Let's actually try to have some real fun. Let's play our new favorite game here on Buffone 55, and we call it Buy, Sell, or...
This is moronic!
Bears might not be firing on all cylinders, but we sure are with the timing of the graphics. Let me tell you that. Everyone has a different story as to why he or she is a Bears fan, but could we see a time where more and more fans will have a story about why they're no longer a Chicago Bears fan? More specifically, I'd like to know how strong the loyalty runs. So, do you buy that it is your lot in life to be a Bears fan no matter how terribly they play, for how long they play terribly? You're a Bears fan and that's it? Or do you sell that idea that your loyalty has limits? And if so, what are those limits? And finally, do you think this is just moronic that we have to be, that basically we are morons and we spend so much of our lives invested in a poorly run organization and we should just move on from it? So, Alyssa, I'm going to start with you. Do you buy, sell, or think this is moronic?
See, if I was a sane person, I would say moronic because, it's just been torturous. Being a Bears fan, especially, since I started following them in 2001, just absolutely brutal. But I'm going to buy. I've seen a lot of bad teams in my life, starting with the Bears. I mean, I'm a Detroit sports fan, so they put me through a lot as well. So I'm not someone who can just casually move on and pick another team. Like once I'm in for life. No matter what they put me through, I'll bitch and moan about it. And so, inch closer and closer to that apathetic state and really want to just jump off and go because it's fun to win. Like on the rare occasions that they do win, it's so much fun. That Super Bowl year, oh my gosh, it was just an absolute blast until they found a way to just absolutely shatter my heart. I would love to get off. I just can't. I think that's part of being a fan. And I think that if the Bears ever do become a competent organization, if they do ever reach that peak and win a Super Bowl, I think all of the losing and all of this, we look back, it will make it that much more sweeter. Now, I'm not super confident that's going to happen anytime soon because, as we know, this dysfunction, it extends to the very top. Yeah, but I would love to jump off, but yeah, I have to buy this. I'm sorry, they got me for life, and hopefully it's not super painful and I don't have to be on my deathbed before they win a Super Bowl.
Danny, buy, sell, or is it moronic?
Alyssa, it's fans like you that the McCaskies absolutely love.
I know.
I gotta sell. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm a loyal Bears fan as well. I born and raised Bears fan, and Alyssa, like Alyssa said, if they ever win a Super Bowl, I'll be excited as everyone else is. But I just can't support a team where organizationally where you can just see the dysfunction, and I just don't think that the McCaskies are not that the McCaskies are bad people. They want to win, but they just don't know how to hire the right people. And it's just a year in and year out. We called it. We said, you can't keep doing this, bringing in a coach and then, or bringing in a new quarterback and a new staff. And then a coach on 1 year left, basically make it or prove it, kind of year, and then fire him and start all over again. They keep doing this over and over again. It's rinse and repeat. And it's just, at what point do you just be like, all right, you know what? They are who they are. I'm not going to live and die by the results. Hey, I might even find some comedic humor in watching these games play, like I did on Thursday on Thanksgiving Day, where Eberflus was looking at the clock when the time was over. It was like, oh, what's going on here? So it's you can't just continue to give in. Like right now, I've gone on a mini protest here. I don't buy any Bears gear. I don't go to any games. I don't spend any money on the Bears. I'll sit and watch. I'll analyze the games. I'll do my job here for the bar room and do the draft stuff. But I'm not going to go out there and give any more money to this franchise where I just feel like they do not really care in terms of, care enough, I should say, to be able to put the right people in place, get the right, get that team out there on the field that everyone can be proud of. We haven't had a winning season since 2018. We haven't had back-to-back, I think 3 years in a row in terms of winning since the 80s, guys. I mean, this is just pure torture, and we do it to ourselves year in and year out. So until I see an actual, a legitimate attempt to get this right, to get people in place that know what they're doing and build a foundation. And then even if they're losing, but they're young and they're hungry and they're playing right and they're playing hard, we can always get behind that, right? But just to see this, this effort on Sunday was just really like kind of the topping on top of the ice cream cone there right there. So it's like, what are you doing here? So no, I'm selling. I'm going to be a fan, but I'm not going to be living and dying with this team because I just don't think this organization is any good in terms of top bottom. And honestly, they are the laughingstock of the NFL right now.
Well, guys, I'm a moron. You can't pick your family, And so I was born into this. My Uncle Doug played for the Chicago Bears. We were a Chicago Bears family. I was born near Pittsburgh. By geographical standards, I should be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but because I have the bloodline to Chicago, I'm a Bears fan. I could have been celebrating Super Bowls and winning seasons and playoff appearances my whole life. But here I am. I'm with the Chicago Bears, and it's just how it is. Listen, I've said this numerous times. The Bears will never love me as much as I love them. It's a toxic relationship. It's a one-sided relationship. It's a relationship that just makes one side crazy and the other side, it's what it is. What it is. You're gonna come back anyway. What are you gonna do? Go pick another team? So that's where I find myself. So I'm ride or die with this team no matter what. I love this team. It doesn't love me most of the time, but that's just how we are as fans. That's just how we are. And and Danny, you're right. The McCaskies and most owners do love those fans that are going to be loyal no matter what. They're going to buy new jerseys. They're going to go to games. They could be 1-16, and they're going to go to that last. They're going to 1-15. They're going to go to that last game, and they're going to spend $250 to sit up in section 420 with the obstructed view in the corner or whatever. And they're going to do it in the freezing cold. And you're like, see, I knew you'd be back. And so that's just how professional sports works. That's how the NFL works. That's how the Chicago Bears work, unfortunately. So I'm I'll call myself a moron, but I don't know any other way to be, and that's just how it is. As we start
growing up, like, the Ditka years, like that was where, like, I mean, if when the Bears lost to Washington, I didn't want to go to school the next day. That's how I felt. I was heartbroken, and it's like year in, year out of that. But you knew they were going to come back next year. They're going to be a tough-minded defense. They're going to be a hard-hitting team. They're going to be competitive. They're going to win the division. But it's just the losing over the years that just sucked it out of me. It's like why am I getting so emotionally invested in something where I just know they're not going to be good at the end of the year, right? You'll have a great year here and there, and then that's great, right? But then all of a sudden, you'll go back to the losing ways, and I just want to see consistent winning. This is an organization, one of the founding organizations of the NFL. It shouldn't be a laughingstock in the NFL. It shouldn't be talked like the same way they talk about the Cleveland Browns or even the New York Jets. It shouldn't be put in that same category or those same sentences. And I just want what's best for this organization. Like you said, John, unfortunately, I think we want it more than some people over at Hallis Hall want it.
Real quick before we start wrapping things up, we got another question here from Brandon. It says, Danny, Alyssa, and John, do you think it's a bad move to hire a coach who was fired by their previous employer? That's why I say we go with the guy who's earned a promotion. I'll start off there. That really depends on the situation. Bill Belichick was fired by Cleveland. Andy Reid was fired in Philadelphia. There were a lot of guys who just needed a change of scenery who were successful. Sometimes if you were completely flamed out, then maybe you want to pump the brakes a little bit. Like, if a Josh McDaniels or someone of that nature where it's like it just didn't work the first time at all. So you got to move on. Now you hear guys getting second chances who take full advantage of that after they learn something. They're saying Arthur Smith might get more sniffs to get a head coach after what he's doing in Pittsburgh this year. Even though I'm not really on that train, but that's neither here nor there. But for me personally, if it's a guy that showed that he can have a certain amount of success, goes back and takes what he learned from those failures, then you can do that. But I also understand, trying to get that person who has worked their way up the ranks and is ready to step up to the challenge. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. Great examples there with Andy Reid and even like Dick Vermeil, right? He was let go by the Eagles and came back with the Rams, and even with the Chiefs, and was competitive there and was a good coach there as well. So there's always, depending on who the coach is, right? If we're talking about Mike Vrabel here in particular, he's a guy that was a defensive coordinator, went to Tennessee, was very successful there. Had a winning record. Was 2-3 in the playoffs, been to an AFC Championship game. Things just didn't work out in terms of in terms of how he wanted the direction of the team to go. So they made a change in terms of the GM and so on and so forth. So that's where it goes there. But in terms of the young and up and coming coordinator, Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are two guys that I'm high on as well. But again, these are guys that have never been head coaches before, right? We don't know how Ben Johnson is in front of a room, right? What if he gets up there in front of a room? He's a man of the Mark Trustman. We don't know that. Okay, so that's the thing. You're taking a chance there, a big risk there. My biggest fear is hiring the wrong guy again and putting Caleb Williams' career back on a backtrack and not allowing this kid to go ahead and progress and get better. So that's why it all depends. And the interview process is going to be huge. For me, my top three guys are Vrabel, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn in that order. And if you go either one of the Detroit guys, right, the coordinators, again, guys have never been head coaches, but at least these are guys that from what you hear from NFL people, these are guys that are up and coming and can run football teams. So, but there are always a risk in hiring head coaches, new head coaches, bringing in new regimes, and in terms of the players on the roster, who's gonna mesh, who's gonna gel, who's not gonna fit in the scheme. So that's why these changes, whether it's firing head coach or firing a GM, they're huge. They have big impacts on your organization and especially on your roster. So I think anytime you fire a head coach and bring in a new coach, there's always a risk. But right now I want someone that's been there, done that, and someone who's been successful. That's what I'm craving right now.
Alyssa, where do you fall in that up and coming coordinator versus the quote unquote retread? Even though that's kind of I don't want to say that in a negative way, but someone who's getting their second crack at a head coach.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything what you guys said. I mean, I definitely would lean more towards that experienced head coach, because you look at the current situation in the locker room and this organization, I feel like you need someone who knows what he's doing. But at the same time, and like Danny said, because Ben Johnson, bite your tongue about him being Mark Trestman, Danny. Don't put that out in the world. We don't need that. No. But yeah, no, because obviously this is going to be on Kevin Warren and I'm assuming Ryan Poles. We'll see how this works out to make that decision. But it does sound like, they are leaning in more of experienced head coaching direction from some reports. It's Mike Vrabel kind of being near the top of that list. So I do think having someone who's been there before and has had success, and you look at Vrabel, what he did in Tennessee, had a winning record, took that team to the playoffs 3 times, working with Ryan Tannehill, and you have Caleb Williams. And obviously, this is going to be the most important thing about the organization that, whoever's running this coaching search is going to have to make. So if you think that Ben Johnson can really get the most out of Caleb Williams, but also ensuring that he can get up in front of a group of men and lead that team and do it all, then, obviously you go in that direction. But like Danny said, there's a risk. You don't know if it's going to work out. And then you have guys, if someone like Vrabel, who has had success, and if that is an option, I could definitely see the Bears leaning in that direction.
Yeah, we'll see which. Either way, they need someone who's going to come in and set a new culture, and whether that's on the offensive, if it's offensive coach, defensive coach, they need someone that's going to say, there is no other result other than winning. At this point, it's going to be results driven. I'm tired of hearing about the things they did right in a loss. I'm tired of hearing about how everyone should be proud of themselves. I'm tired of hearing about how you battled back to only lose by 4. I'm over that. You win or you lose. That's basically what comes of it. Especially when you're in year 3 of a rebuild, going into year 4 of a rebuild. So there's the time for moral victories is over. And let's face it. To Danny's point and to what we were talking about, that new coach is going to have an immense amount of pressure on them to win pretty quickly. And because of maybe Ryan Poles' job being on the line, maybe because you have Caleb Williams still on his rookie contract, you still have a lot of talent at the skilled positions. If you can rebuild the offensive line and defensive line, that coach is going to come in and be like, hey, if you go, 3-14 this year, no problem. There are going to be expectations with this job,
right.
and learning on the fly is not going to be an excuse for a lot of people. So you're going to have to hire somebody that comes in and they're ready to go guns blazing.
Right. Kevin Warren wants to win next year, guys. Kevin Warren doesn't want to rebuild. He wants this team to be competitive next year on the football field. Like I said, take advantage of Caleb Williams' rookie deal, but also he wants a shiny object to get that deal done, to get that stadium deal done. I'm 100% convinced of that. So I think this is not no one's going to come in here and tear down a roster like they did 3 years ago. This is going to be, you're going to come in and this is going to take what we have here, add to it, coach it up, and I want to see a winner on a football field next year.
Absolutely. And as we start to wind this show down, I do want to get into the college ranks a little bit. Alyssa, I believe Michigan will not be in the playoffs this year, but they do get to play in a nice bowl game. I think they got Alabama, don't they?
They do. I mean, it'd be something if they could beat Alabama twice in the same calendar year, but not expecting that with a lot of the starters that are draft bound, including Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Not expecting them to play, but hey, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the college football playoff, this expanded 12 team. I think it's going to be really exciting. Happy that Alabama didn't make it in because I didn't think that they deserved to. But I know that Danny, I can't wait for Danny to watch this and to give us all of these, just to really focus on the trenches and give us some names that we should be watching for the Bears, because whoever is GM, if it's Ryan Poles or if it's someone else, obviously we're going to see a lot of focus on the trenches in this draft.
100%. And Danny, I'd love to get your opinion on what you think of that, the bracket that came out, the first ever 12-team playoff in college football. A lot of people talking about it. A lot of people have taken issues with it. How do you think that bracket shook out?
Yeah, the biggest combo was SMU versus Alabama, and I think they went ahead and I think SMU playing tough at Clemson, coming back versus Clemson and barely losing that game. I think that kind of showed them well, and I think that ended up kicking them into the game. So there's some nice juicy matchups here in that first round. Indiana Notre Dame, I think is going to be a pretty good game there. Tennessee and Ohio State. Could that be Ryan Day coaching for his coaching career at Ohio State? We'll see how it goes there as well. So Clemson, Texas. I really think Texas is going to go ahead and wall up Clemson, to be honest with you, and then we move on to the next round. But yeah, there's a ton of NFL talent. You talk about guys up against the line of scrimmage. Penn State, Abdul Carter, that edge rusher. He's another guy. Where's number 11? Kind of looks like Micah Parsons. Speed galore, closing burst. Guys got he's got 20 tackles for loss, 10 sacks already, 2 forced fumbles. He's already been named the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. That's a guy from Penn State to keep an eye on. In terms of the trenches, that Oregon, when they end up playing, look for Derek Harmon, their defensive tackle there inside. Michael Williams from Georgia, another defensive edge guy as well. So ton of talent here on the offensive defense line. So we'll get more specific as we get into these games. But yeah, I mean the first match, SMU Penn State game, that's going to be I think a high scoring game there as well. With Tyler Warren, a guy from Penn State, is that tight end. We talked about, Cole Kmet, a nice compliment to Cole Kmet. Now, I know I'm talking about, further down in the draft here, but Tyler Warren is a guy that can do everything from that H-back / tight end position. So keep an eye on him there as well. So, a lot of talent to watch during these first couple rounds here as well. But that juiciest matchup for me is that Ohio State-Tennessee matchup.
Go Vols.
Yeah, and I of course, and your Wolverines may have cost Ryan Day his job there. So
oh no, I want him to stay. It's so much fun beating him.
About kicking a man while he's down. Come on, Alyssa.
Why don't you plant a flag, Alyssa? You're gonna go plant the flag at the 50-yard line.
Absolutely.
I figured. Yeah. I don't really have a problem with the teams that made it in. The one thing I think that is Penn State lost the Big Ten championship game and now have I think an easier route than Oregon does to make it further, because they play SMU in the first round, and then if they win, they play Boise State. Not to take anything away from Boise State, but if you're Oregon, you get the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, and then you're eventually going to run into Texas to get into the national championship game. I think if you asked Oregon or if you asked Penn State if they would switch spots with Oregon right now, they'd say no, we're good, we're all right. so that's the only thing that I thought that was a little peculiar. But all in all, that's going to be really fun to watch, the first ever 12-team playoff in college football. It might see some future Bears in there as well. So let's go around the horn one more time before we get out of here. Alyssa, what's going on over at the Wire, especially Bears Wire?
Yeah, well, as you know, we have 4 games left this season. So, of course, we're focusing on the offseason, the upcoming offseason, and all of the reports about, head coaching candidates, anything about Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and all that. But yes, there is still a game, so we're still going to have coverage previewing Monday night's game against the Vikings, which I know that you, John, especially are excited for because it is prime time. But yes, make sure you check out Bears Wire. We got you covered for the last 4 games, but also, most importantly, one of the most important off seasons, I think, in Bears history coming up here.
I feel like we say that every year, Alyssa, but I think you're right. Danny, you're already in draft mode. You're already in scout mode. What's going on the next couple weeks? What are you getting into?
Yeah, well, obviously this week the slate is clean in terms of college football. There's the Army-Navy game, but I'm keeping an eye on the Senior Bowl. I mean, there's already the invites have been sent out. There's already been some players that have accepted their invites. I'm taking a look and see who's going to be attending the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Of course, that's the big showcase in terms of the college All-Star game. So already got my eyes on some players there that are going to be appearing there in Mobile. To check them out, scout them, break them down as well. So draft is coming fast and furious. Obviously, at least this year we wait until week 7 or no, we wait what, like week 9 before we start talking about the draft. I mean, last year we were talking about it week 2.
Yeah.
So they gave us a couple extra weeks of some entertaining football here. But again, we're focusing on next year. We're talking about coaching staff. If they bring in a new coaching staff, what kind of system are they going to run? Are they still going to run a athletic, in terms of offensive alignment? They're going to run a wide zone, inside zone? Are they going to be more of a power gap scheme? That changes everything in terms of how you scout for an offensive lineman. In terms of the defense, we talked about earlier. Think about 3-4, 4-3. You want bigger, stronger guys, more stout guys at the line of scrimmage. Think like big Ted Washington and some of the bigger guys inside to kind of occupy those blockers and let the edge guys fly up the field. So it depends on what they do, who they bring in. So a lot of intrigue here in terms of moving forward for the Bears, not only for their coaching staff, but also for the future of the franchise and the draft as well, and for agency too. So.
Yeah, we're coming into your wheelhouse here, and maybe some year when it's December and we're doing a Bears podcast, we can talk about the actual game coming up and what it can mean for playoff positioning. But I dream.
Hey, once every 10 years, we get a good season. So keep your fingers crossed.
Flash in the pan once every 10 years, and then we're back to what we do best, and that's talking about the draft and the offseason and who's going to be the next head coach. So
that's why I sold. That's why I sold.
I get it. Oh, I get it. I'm not going to say I don't understand it. I just can't do it. But that'll do it. That'll do it for this edition of Buffone 55. We appreciate everyone who tuned in, whether it's the live version, the podcast version, the audio version, or the video version, whether it's your first time, your 55th time. We appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you click like and subscribe on all of those places where you can watch and listen to your podcast. Make sure you check out all of the programming here at the Barroom Network. We got Bears coverage all over the place. A lot of good stuff, a lot of unique stuff that you won't get anywhere else. So make sure that you set that alert and subscribe and do whatever you got to do to listen and watch us here at the Barroom Network. But that will do it for us tonight. For Alyssa Barbieri and Denny Shimon, I'm John Buffone. Big props to Aldo Gandia. We'll see you next week.